Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, David. We've become good friends over the last sort of years period of time, and it's great for me to be part of our entrepreneurial community here, and happy to be sort of talking with you. And the opposite of won is lost. But yes, I did do 2 America's Cups and then got back into sort of the technology industry in the late 90s. I've started 6 companies, a few of which unsuccessful, a couple of which been successful, and a few yet to be determined. I'm going to tell you some stories today about Gist, about my experience in Gist, and really try and encourage you to think hard about your own connections, your own social footprint, and how you increase that and what it will do to lead to your own business success. So as David said, I started Gist in sort of 2007, 2008, and I funded that with Paul Allen and a guy named Brad Feld, who I'll speak about in a second. We sold it to BlackBerry about 1.5 years ago, and now I run everything social for BlackBerry. So I'm in charge of BlackBerry Messenger, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those applications on the BlackBerry platform. So I spend a lot of time thinking about social and connection, and obviously within BlackBerry a little bit from a specific focus on business. So first of all, I'd like you to first of all reflect on why we all do this, why we start our companies, and who we start our companies with, and what we need to be successful in our companies. I argue it's to make people's lives better. And I hope if you keep that in mind, you're thinking about the lives of the people who you're selling to, the people, the lives you're working with, and that vision, at least for me, is what is sort of a core, sits at the tenet of why I want to do what I want to do. Focusing on people, focusing on connections with other people, focusing on helping them to get to where they want to go, and that was just what Gist was all about. So for all of us who start businesses, one of the key things we need are investors, people to support us. This is Brad Feld, and I can tell you he's the managing partner of the Foundry Group. He was a first investor in a company that built Guitar Hero. He's a first investor in Zynga. He's a first investor in Fitbit. He's invested in hundreds and hundreds of different companies, and I can tell you if you start a company that's in the technology space, you would do well to have a guy like this one on your side. He's amazing, and I hope to do another startup with him. He's also one of the founders of Techstars, and he's giving back a lot into the entrepreneurial community. So I want to tell you how I met Brad Feld. So we started Gist in 2008. We put the product out into private beta, and the first day that we put it into private beta, guys from Foundry sent us an email and said, hey, we see what you're doing, and we think it's pretty interesting. We've been thinking about a lot of the same sorts of problems, and for those of you who don't know, Gist was in the space of a next generation address book. Bring all my contacts together, try and prioritize them, enhance them with all their social content, discover you on Twitter, discover you on LinkedIn, so that when I look at you, I've got a 360-degree view of who you are, what you're up to, and what you care about. That was Gist, and now we're building that into BlackBerry. But we put Gist out into the market into a small sort of way, and we got an inbound from the Foundry guys saying, we think this is pretty interesting. They said, we'd like you to come to this particular conference called Defrag and come and speak about what you're doing. And we hadn't heard about Defrag, and we hadn't really heard about Foundry. So we started doing a little bit of research, and I found out that Brad Feld was a runner. I'm a runner too. So I said, hey, thank you for introducing us to Defrag. We'd love to come. And while I'm coming there, maybe we could get together and go running. Now, we started a relationship on Twitter. I was messaging him on Twitter and back and forth, all on Twitter, so everyone could see as we were building this particular relationship. And he said, I'm coming to Denver. I don't know where to run in Denver. Could you recommend a few places? He said, sure, let's meet at the hotel, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we'll go run before the conference starts. Everybody who was coming to that conference could see that interaction happening. How many people showed up for the run at 6 o'clock in the morning? 2. Just me and Brad. That was the first time I met Brad, and we spent the next hour and 15 minutes or so running, chatting, talking about kind of how we see the world, why we want to build companies, how we want to build companies. And that was in a November timeframe. When we started that relationship, we started communicating fairly often through the fall and into the winter. And when I wanted to raise funding for Gist, it took one meeting. Flew to Boulder, met the rest of his partners, and they funded Gist. So the key there is show up. The key there is understand what's important about the other person and create both a business and a social sort of context to describe it. And that was covered in the Wall Street Journal after a while, so you can read it in probably more articulate way than I gave it. Second, all right, show of hands. How many people in here have more than 1,000 connections on LinkedIn? More than 5,000. Okay, 2,500. So here's 5,000. There's a person right there with 5,000 connections on LinkedIn. That's one indication of him being a connector. It's not the only one, but he's a connector. One of the things that you all have to do as entrepreneurs is understand who in your network are key connectors. Who are the people who know all the other people who know you? This is Buzz Bruggeman. Anybody know Buzz in here? A few got to know Buzz. So Buzz is a super connector. He is somebody I know. He started a company called ActiveWords, which allows you to sort of be much more efficient on your PC. So write that one down. Check out ActiveWords. Buzz knows everybody. And Buzz and I became friends. And Buzz is also a productivity geek, as is ActiveWords is a productivity product. And when he saw what we were doing, he said, this is amazing. I want to start telling lots of other people about it, and lots of other people in the productivity space. So Buzz kind of camped out at our office for a while. I traded him free office space while he was working on some stuff, so he would sort of make introductions on my behalf. And when you're thinking about getting your product out there, you want to think about who are the key people who need to know about that product. And if they know about that product, are they likely to talk to their large networks about it? Anybody know who that is? David Allen. Anybody know how many Twitter followers he has? 1.25 million. If you have a product that's in the productivity space and David Allen talks about it to his 1.25 million followers, that's a pretty good endorsement. Buzz introduced me to David, and David talked about GIST to his 1.25 million followers. The second point I'll make about that is not only that you have to know the connector to get to the people who are influential, you have to have something of value, some content of value. In our case, we had a productivity solution. We had a solution that would save people time, that would help them focus on what was most important. David is all about saving time and focus on what's most important. Or at least that's how I characterized my product when I talked to David Allen, which got him engaged in what we were doing. Anybody know them? Scoble. Probably the most influential journal in the journalist in the tech space. Also a great friend of Buzz. In fact, Buzz helped him get his first job outside of Microsoft. We'll always be indebted to him. So Buzz said, Scoble, you got to come and see what these guys are doing. So Scoble interviewed me at least twice, if not 3 times. But that came partly because of Buzz's connection with me, and partly because we had interesting content. We were a new startup doing things in new ways. And so with Scoble, we were talking to him about how we were building the product as well as what we were building. Interesting content, key connection, ultimately led to a tremendous amount of interest in what we were doing. And he remains a good friend of mine, thanks to Buzz. You have to share your content, share with the community, make them more successful. David needed one thing, Scoble needed a different thing. I had to recharacterize my product for each one of them for that kind of promotion. Anybody know him? I didn't think so. Exactly, you should. So, as you're all building your business, I would argue that no matter what space you sit in, you have a set of people that I would call the new influencer. These are people that generally have a day job. They generally are passionate about whatever space you're in, and they write about it. These are the bloggers of the future. This is the journalism of the future. This was Scoble 10 years ago. This is Miles Austin. Miles Austin writes a blog called Fill the Funnel. It's all about sales productivity and web tools. He's one of the foremost thinkers in this space. So if you want to be productive and you're a salesperson, and who in here doesn't need to be productive as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, you need to know about Miles Austin. Now, Miles was introduced to me through my network of other sort of people, and he needed interesting new tools and sets of content. So obviously GIST was one of those, but if all I'm doing is talking about GIST, it's not very interesting for Miles. It's modestly interesting for a little bit. My job to him was to be a source of new sets of tools. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Can you put those two things together to make you more productive? Miles started talking about us, and also was yet another way that we were able to promote the product of GIST into the kinds of people who like to know about that and, by the way, are also very influential. are also forward-thinking. The people who are reading and keeping up with Miles are the subset of people in here who are way more productive and way better salespeople and are increasing their sales productivity using tools and online strategies. So you've got to influence the influencers. And if you don't know them, at my talk later on today, I'm going to talk about how you find these people online, how you build relationships with them, what tools you use, and how to scale yourself. Okay, next one. Customers. Anybody know this guy? You won't know him. Greg Meyer. Greg Meyer was in charge of customer advocacy for Gist. So when I started off building my relationship with Scoble or David or Miles, I did that myself. And I did that for myself until we scaled the business to a certain level that I wanted help with that, and I hired Greg. So Greg was in charge of two things. Know important people who are having a good experience with our product and turn them into marketing. And find people who are influential or who are using our product and having a bad experience and go solve it. That's his whole job. It's partly product, it's partly support, it's partly sales, I don't know. That's his job. So when we got acquired by Gist, Greg left about a week later. He started a company called Desk.com, and Desk.com was acquired 2 months later by Salesforce. So Greg had 2 significant exits in 3 months period of time, and now he's in charge of all of that sort of support and customer engagement for Salesforce.com. Pretty important guy to know. And Greg lives here in Seattle. He's amazing. But having a Greg on your team, first of all, having your own, as the CEO or founder, understanding of how to do the things I'm talking about is important, but then also starting to say, who on my team is going to focus on these key influencers? The guy with 5,000 connections on LinkedIn who's using my product and might be excited about it, how do I make sure that he is engaged and he's telling his network about what we're doing? That's Greg's job. Develop a culture of engagement. And strangely enough, customers are people too. Customers are influencers too. And we built a process at Gist that we called Friends of Gist. So every Wednesday night, for the first 18 months of the company, we would invite 3 people into the company. They'd come to our office and we'd do a little bit of a half an hour long focus. In some ways this feels like a focus group, but it was much more focused on specifically engaging with key customers. That half an hour meeting with our customers looked something like, the first 10 minutes was us understanding them. The next 10 minutes was us showing them our product and they used our product, and the last 10, and us getting feedback about it. And the last 10 minutes, which I think was most important, was us educating them on a lot of the stuff I've already shown you. Are you aware of Miles Austin? Did you know about ActiveWords? So they always left being introduced to a new product, ours. Like it, don't like it, that didn't matter. But they left being smarter about the space of understanding your network, understanding a set of tools, thinking about strategies that can make you a better business person. So we were sharing that. That Friends of Gist, I think, was one of the sort of most important things that we did. And Greg ultimately ran that program. And what you're really looking for is this kind of emotion. This kind of emotion that will come from your users and will be put out into the world, especially when these kinds of people, whether it's David Allen or one of our users like this, talking about your product. And that being out when you have people like David or Scoble or Buzz or Greg or Miles following you as an individual entrepreneur or following your company and their ability to amplify these kinds of messages. It's one thing to say we have product X, Y, and Z and feature A, B, C. It's a whole different thing when people are saying this about your product. And it's your job to sort of create those, obviously, at the product level, but more importantly, understand how to push them through social channels and understand how influential people amplify those things through their own social channels. So, coming full circle, this is a picture of me and Brad. Last May, I think, or so, we ran a marathon together in Wisconsin. Brad's on a quest to do 50 marathons in 50 states by the time he's 50. I think he's on 27 or 28, so I did Wisconsin with him. It was sort of fitting that we met first and foremost running, and all the way through the cycle of building the company, selling the company successfully, having a really nice return for our investors, and being able to go and sort of do a run at the end of that. So in that case, it was appropriate for us to sort of end on that note. Not end. End the GIST saga, I would say. Now we're sort of talking about the next company that we're going to work on together. Hopefully that'll start for me sometime next year after I finish bringing the value that we created in GIST into BlackBerry. And so what I'll leave you with is, first of all, thinking hard about connecting with other people. This is an amazing room full of people. If you think about the core influence and the reach of the number of people that sit in this room, it's incredible if you know how to connect with them. Second is listening, learning, and most importantly, sharing. If I know enough about what you're trying to achieve, and I know something about the tools that I might know about to give them to you to make you achieve more, you're more likely to help me when I need something in the future. Listen, learn, and share. You have to experiment. You have to experiment with how do you connect with people? Do they connect mostly online or mostly offline? What frequency and what do they really need? And then you have to persist. Building social connections takes time. It takes time to nurture connections. It takes time to play with different tools to scale yourself. It takes persistence. I would argue it's one of the most important things you can be doing as an entrepreneur. As she spoke about previously, coming up here and speaking and connecting with people, sharing your knowledge as an entrepreneur, incredibly valuable. But as you do that, please keep in mind the reason that we all do this. The opportunity that we all have as entrepreneurs to create the future, to create products, to create connections that make people's lives better. Thank you very much.